I'm okay with states taking way more of a role in all of this. That is a key piece of what conservatives
Are you okay with
that we don't want a large
daycare?
Federal government. We're not cutting daycare.
Are you okay with cutting Medicaid in order to fund the military?
I'm okay with cutting out the fraud, waste, and abuse, which is precisely what he was talking about.
Adam Mockler returned to the Abby Phillips Show as part of a panel discussing Donald Trump's latest foolish statements. And we're going to look at clips of this panel with Adam Mockler going up against right-wingers Lydia Mohan, Peter Meyer, and Jason Rantz, Captain Eyebrows himself. And I also want to share my thoughts on this one. So let's get into it together.
Last night, Donald Trump tried to sell the American people on his war in Iran in a primetime address to the nation. But comments that he made in a closed-door event just hours earlier epitomize his struggle to make the case. In remarks that were briefly posted and then taken down by the White House yesterday, Trump said that the federal government ought to focus on certain priorities.
The United States can't take care of daycare. That has to be up to a state. We can't take care of daycare. We're a big country. We have 50 states. We have all these other people. We're fighting wars. We can't take care of daycare. You got to let a state take care of daycare, and they should pay for it, too. They should pay. They have to raise their taxes, but they should pay for it. And we could lower our taxes a little bit to them to make up. But it's not possible for us to take care of daycare. Medicaid, Medicare, all these individual things, they can do it on a state basis. You can't do it on a federal. We have to take care of one thing, military protection.
In an attempt to clarify those remarks, the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt claimed that Trump was being taken out of context and that he was talking about the importance of rooting out fraud in Democratic states. Leavitt wrote, the Trump economic agenda will continue to lower costs for hardworking American families. President Trump saying that after he used to say things like this back in 2016 on the campaign trail is also what makes this surprising. Listen.
The people opposing us are the same people who and think of this, who've wasted $6 trillion on wars in the Middle East. We could have rebuilt our country twice. That have produced only more terrorism, more death, more suffering. Imagine if that money had been spent right here in our home. We've totally destabilized the Middle East. And if you think about it, $6 trillion, and it was far better 15 years ago.
What happened to that Donald Trump, Lydia?
Well, I would like to point out, since a lot of people don't seem to know, the vast majority of the federal budget does go to entitlements, and the role of the government is to protect and defend its citizens. I don't know, maybe I missed a founding document where it said everyone should get free daycare, but I don't think it is in the Constitution. And to Caroline Leavitt's point, I do think this hits home because the fact of the matter is we are seeing states, whether it's fraudulent or not, are spending a fortune on some of these government programs. In New York and California, we're spending more than $100K on each homeless person with literally nothing to show for it. In states where we spend $30,000 on education, they have some of the worst scores. DC, whereas you look at Texas, is spending $10K per student and actually performs much better. So I don't think money is the answer. If you look at how we've spent it, it doesn't really seem to be solving the problems.
10 years ago, Donald Trump did not think that
I
was
do think it's important to note.
He was arguing that we shouldn't be spending money on regime change wars overseas, and we should spend that money on our people here at home. That was a common refrain when he was running for president. That's one of the things that differentiated him from his competitors in that.
Yes, but the context of that original statement was about wars that he did not believe were in our best interests. He's obviously making a different case.
Who defines our best interest?
Yeah, the president of the United States and the people who represent us. They're part of the whole process.
So Barack Obama defined our best interest.
They were in our best interest
and we can, I'm not saying it's illegitimate.
No, you just said they weren't in our best interest, but those were in our best interest by your own definition, because the president said they were in our best interest.
I don't know what conversation you're listening to. A president is able to say, I believe this is in our best interest. We all get to disagree with that 100% of the time, if we so choose, or
for now,
wait for it, we can actually agree with it. The statement that he made yesterday, if you rewind like 20 seconds before the segment, he was talking about Minnesota. And he was talking specifically about fraud. That's literally what he was saying going into that. And if you go over a little bit more, and I'm glad we include the clip at the end where he's talking about the defense, that was the context of the statement. So they're two completely different things. Valid to disagree with either of them, but that's actually what he said.
Even with the context of the statement, it makes no sense.
So it makes plenty of sense.
So we're going to kick Medicaid back to the states.
No,
we're going to kick Medicaid. Listen,
that's
we're
not
going to kick Medicaid back to the states, and we're going to raise taxes on a state level, but then maybe lower it on a federal level to equalize it. This makes no sense whatsoever. And how do you think this is going to play for the American people come to midterms? We're saying we're going to have to sacrifice Medicaid.
I think taking him out of context is a really smart strategy in that ad.
Is he out of context 24/7? Because everything he says goes against his own best interests.
No, that was completely out of context. And you're taking him out of context.
Are you okay with throwing Medicaid back to the states?
I'm okay with states taking way more of a role in all of this. That is a key piece of what conservatives
Are you
believe
okay with
is that we don't want
cutting
a large
daycare?
federal government. And we're not cutting daycare. We're
Are you
not
okay with cutting
daycare.
Medicaid in order to
I'm
fund
okay
the
with
military?
cutting out the fraud, waste, and abuse, which
That's
is precisely
not- that
what
is
he
not
was
what he
talking
said.
about. Go listen to the
out of
speech.
How many
Go listen to the
people have
speech.
been arrested?
Did you listen to the full speech?
How many people have been arrested
Did you
due to Nick
listen to
Shirley?
the full speech?
Yes, I did. It was a lunch.
And so
it was
you're
lunch, yes.
arguing. You listened to the full speech, and you're saying that he wasn't talking about Minnesota
Okay,
fraud.
how many
That's
people
what
in
you're saying
Minnesota
right
have
now?
they prosecuted due to Nick Shirley's video? How many people have they prosecuted due to Nick Shirley?
I don't know.
Zero. If this
The
Nick
videos
Shirley
that just
video
came out not long ago. Yes,
in
I'm sure
November,
that-
zero
You know,
prosecution,
so
zero
there's no
indictments.
fraud. We're back to the there's
All
no
right.
fraud in Minnesota.
I mean, why?
All right, look. All right, the Democrats.
I want to pause for a moment because I love watching Adam Mockler rile up these MAGA creeps like Jason Rantz, Captain Eyebrows, and this is such a perfect example of so many right-wing talking points packed into just a 3 or 4 minute period between Jason Rantz and Lydia Mohan. Every time people like Jason Rantz, Lydia Mohan, or Scott Jenick go on the Abby Phillips show, it's always the same. You can't take what Donald Trump actually said at face value. It's always, well, he meant this, it's out of context, and we really need to do this. Lydia Mohan and Jason Rantz acted outraged when Adam Mockler said we're going to cut daycare, pointing to Donald Trump saying, we can't do daycare, literally using his own words, and they always pull the same excuse. If you've ever argued with a right-winger about anything, and you mention, Sweden does this, they'll say, the United States is too big, Sweden is small, we're too big. To me, that's completely moronic because the United States is a big, powerful country with plenty of money and resources, so it should be able to do anything it wants, and ultimately, that's what this argument always comes down to. The right-wingers only care about war and have no interest in doing anything that actually benefits regular people. You're on your own, while the military gets unlimited spending. Lydia Mohan talks about protecting citizens, but what about Medicare, Medicaid, and daycare? Aren't those ways of protecting people, making sure they don't die from preventable illnesses because they can't afford a doctor or hospital? She also argues that we can't just throw money at programs like Medicare, daycare, or helping the homeless, and while education wasn't specifically mentioned, it's another example. Yet, when it comes to the military, the United States spends $1 trillion defense budget against countries like Iran, which has an estimated $10 billion budget, and no one questions that. Maybe instead of more money, we should fight smarter, like Iran does with drones that cost $25,000 compared to U.S. missiles that cost $1 million each. And, of course, since these comments aired, Donald Trump has said he wants a $1.5 trillion defense budget to be paid for by cutting all other government spending by 10%, which is completely obscene.
Regardless of this whole debate, are going to run on this, okay? As you know, Chris Murphy says, this is what we run on in the fall. Also, the corruption. Rokana says, Trump says we can pay for a war with Iran, but we can't afford childcare. House Democrats said, Trump says there's no money for daycare or health care, but plenty for his war with Iran. It doesn't help that the bill for the war is believed to be about $1 billion per day. The Trump administration is considering a $200 billion supplemental. There is real money that is being thrown at this war at a time when the House Republicans are saying we can't fund subsidies for healthcare. We can't fund really anything. We've got to cut. I mean, I think that is going to, regardless of the context of that statement, the fact of the situation is going to be a midterm issue.
100%. And I think one of the challenges that you have in government is nobody wants to pay an ounce for prevention, but ex post, once that attack happens, once that war is on, money will come in. But I would much rather spend, the ounce today than have to deal with the pound later. And this is where, with the Trump administration on the defense side of the House, they're trying to get closer to a 5% of GDP defense budget, which I think is right and appropriate. That's getting us back to Cold War levels, because above all else, they are fearful and they are right to do so. And it is appropriate for them to do everything in their power to forestall a great power conflict between the U.S. and China. That would cost, at a minimum, $10 trillion, hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of American lives in that conflict would wreak havoc on the global economy and be a true world war. So if spending over the next few years an incremental $1 trillion in order to forestall that is a wise investment.
So I'm going to piggyback on what Peter just said, which is that an ounce of prevention is going to be better than what happens later and paying for it. If we get child care and education and services for kids, that means there's going to be fewer kids going into the prison system later. Wait a minute. Let me finish my point. At the end of the day. So we are not every battle that we are fighting is kinetic.
No.
Some of these battles and competitions we're fighting with countries like China. You worry about the international competition. I am worried about that too. And the question for me is, are we going to have children in America prepared to take on the fight they're going to have? Are we going to have entrepreneurs who are going to prepare to build companies to be able to battle that?
We have school choice in the Mississippi model. Yes.
You think spending billions of dollars
I think it's
Means that we're
better.
gonna get better
Let me
results?
tell you this. Let me tell you this. I met a woman who was an entrepreneur who said that she was building a company and she had to stop building her company every day at 3 o'clock because she had to get her kid out of school. If we gave her childcare, she would be able to have 2 more hours of taking care of her company and building that. Workers who can't work extra shifts because they can't afford to get childcare. We can have a more competitive economic
We spend
country. If we can
$180
take care of-
billion
Guys,
on
that's got to be the last.
Medicare.
That's got to be
Why
the
don't we
last
spend
word.
less money on
That's got to be the last word there. Coming up next, the president versus.
All right, I wish Adam Mockler or Jamal Simmons had said, and they touched on it briefly, why isn't the same approach applied to the military? Why is it always an unlimited black hole for military spending, and shouldn't we question whether we're spending wisely there? Anything that actually benefits regular people is always scrutinized, while the military gets a free pass. Peter Meyer talks about an ounce of prevention, so why not make it so that every American doesn't have to worry about going to a doctor and possibly going bankrupt? Give everyone Medicare, so people can get checkups and avoid ending up in the emergency room with stage 4 cancer simply because they couldn't afford to see a doctor earlier. Isn't that what prevention really means? Protecting health, rather than starting more offensive wars? If you're an American, think about what would benefit you more. Not having to stress over medical bills, avoiding bankruptcy if you get sick even with insurance, affording your children's or your own college education, or another war in the Middle East that only brings higher gas prices. The price of everything is going up, and everything else is going to follow. Like I just saw Amazon adding a fee for sellers because of fuel prices, and I know I'm repeating myself, but the right-wingers, Jason Rants, Captain Eyebrows, Lydia Mohan, Peter Meyer, always push unlimited money for more wars, while telling American citizens there isn't money to help them. They claim, we're protecting you, by starting offensive and illegal wars that make everything more expensive for regular people. Yet when it comes to affordable healthcare, education, or daycare, suddenly there's no money. Instead, they say we're helping by bombing people in another country and driving up gas prices, which makes no sense, but that's the world we live in. If Democrats understand this, like Roanna does, they need to run on it for the midterms, playing it repeatedly in ads, because Captain Eyebrows and Lydia Mohan might claim it's taken out of context, but it's right there for everyone to see. This is how the right wing thinks: unlimited funding for war, no funding for you. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you agree with Adam Mockler and Jamal Simmons, or with the MAGA crowd that assembles every night on the Abby Phillips Show? Make sure to like and subscribe. I'm Chris on Culture, and I'll see you in the next video.